Let's get more on this from Jack Edlow, chairman of the International Board of Advisors at the Nuclear Energy Institute. Jack, 25 years after Chernobyl, we had Fukushima. It's 5 years since then. What is the status over there?
Well, of course, Chernobyl was a different kind of accident than Fukushima because the Russian reactor, their reactor design did not have a containment dome over it. So when in that case, core caught fire, there was no containment to maintain the integrity of keeping the radiation in place. So that's why it went out. Fukushima, of course, is a different type of reactor, and those reactors all did have containment domes. However, due to an explosion, some radiation was released and did go further out. However, at Fukushima, as far as I'm aware, from what I know, there have been no deaths related to the radiation. All the deaths came from both the earthquake and the gigantic tsunami.
But there is, of course, the concern that the radiation leads to cancer. There has been a link between radiation and cancer.
Of course. And it is possible that in the future there could be cancer deaths in that area, and there could be a spike. But so far, we have not seen that in the industry.
What about acute radiation syndrome? Has any of that happened at Fukushima as it did in Chernobyl?
No, not in that case. Most of the deaths at Chernobyl were to the firemen who rushed in to put out the fire and deliberately exposed themselves.
So what were the major lessons learned from the Fukushima disaster?
This is interesting. A lot of it had to do, I think, with management control and how responses were taken and barriers to protect the diesels and such like that. And there were many lessons learned, and I think the Japanese have taken great steps to go forward so they can regain nuclear power.
With Fukushima, as we said, it was an earthquake that triggered a tsunami, not necessarily the fault of the way the plant was built. Tremendous improvements made with regards to that. Now, in New York, 30 miles north of New York City, there's a nuclear power plant in Westchester. That apparently sits on 2 seismic faults. Is that a disaster just waiting to happen?
Well, I don't think so, but this would be up to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission of the United States, the independent agency which deals with siting and licensing and regulations of the plant. So I would leave it to the experts to make that decision.
Well, let's talk about the regulatory agency there. How much coordination is there globally between power plants, governments, and the World Authority?
Well, the IAEA, I think, is the world authority of which you speak, and they set the general guidelines for international nuclear regulatories. Now, each country adopts those positions. In some cases, people go higher. In some people's cases, they modify it. In my particular industry, which is transport, in which I have to move radioactive materials across many countries in a particular occasion, I have to follow, in some cases, different regulatory situations. But in a country, when a power plant or a nuclear facility remains in one location, it only needs to meet the requirements of its own nation.
Jack, let's dismiss the threats of accidents, earthquakes, even terrorism. There has been a link between cancers, leukemia, breast cancer, other types of cancers, for people living around or near nuclear plants. Can we say that nuclear energy is safe?
Yes, I think we can. There's also a link to people and to cancer in people who live near certain chemical facilities or who have fiberglass in their house.
Well, that may mean that those facilities aren't safe either.
But we don't see this case in nuclear where there have been major spikes.
Of course, there's a lot of benefits to nuclear energy as well, and nuclear use in medicine. We'll touch on that a little bit later.